Talking about the customer for a second, you mentioned in there about how you could be customer centric, but many people, including Demings, for example, quote, "Innovation comes from the producer, not the customer." So, and Edward de Bono, that I know you know well, he says generally customers are great at giving feedback on what you're not doing particularly well, but they're very unlikely to give you massive insights that are going to innovate and drive your business forward. Steve Jobs probably agrees with that. Can they? The big innovations?
I think they can, yes. And it's interesting you say about Steve Jobs, you see, because I think his genius was actually translating technology into a form that would help people in their lives. And I think that was as much observational, his insight into people's lives, as it was his insight into the technology. Right. But I think, we found that if you just observe in a very broad sense, people's lives, almost in an anthropological sense, needs will emerge that are not being met. So you have a chance as an organisation to be the one that meets that need. Right. And I use the example of Tesco Express. The industry logic, the innovators in the, if you like, said that big stores were what worked. The economics of the industry everywhere in the world was big stores. But actually, when you spoke to ordinary people, they said we're getting busier and busier in our lives. Even though they were working less hours, life's just more complicated. We have less time to go to big stores. And so, against the industry wisdom, we developed miniaturized stores that we could then place, adjacent to people in high streets and office parks and university campuses and villages. Which were Tesco Express, which actually proved to be hugely successful. And Tesco Express, the turnover is in billions of pounds. There are thousands of them all over the world, not just the UK. And they're the most popular format. Now that innovation, which was highly profitable, came from listening to what customers were saying about their lives.
Yeah, because Tesco, can you just tell us very briefly, Tesco.com, it was back in 1995, you went to some exhibition and you spotted that trend. Can you just tell us that story?
Yeah, I went with my colleague Tim Mason to an installation that was called the Store of the Future. And it was done by Anderson Consulting, who are now Accenture. Yeah. And we went along sort of reluctantly and had a look around. It was quite good, actually. And then the final exhibition was a kitchen, somebody's kitchen. This is in 1995. And there was a computer in the kitchen, which you'll have to think back, but that was very odd, because if you had a computer, you certainly didn't have it in your kitchen then. And so we all asked the curator, why is there a computer in the kitchen? They said, one day people will be able to order their shopping, their food shopping from home. Well, we all fell about laughing. We thought that was absolutely ridiculous. And we spent about an hour telling him why that would never work, in terms of how would you communicate the order, who would pick it, and how would you deliver it, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so as we left, Tim and I just said, but customers would like it, wouldn't they, if you could do that? I know it's ridiculous, but it would be really popular. Yeah. Anyway, within 6 months, we'd launched Tesco.com. And the point there being that, the lesson we learned is don't question what a customer wants. Work out a way of seeing if you can actually meet that need and make a living out of it. Mm.
But you had the foresight and the insight to spot that, and also Tesco Express, I think the idea came to you in a car park, right? So I guess you, as leaders, you just need to be switched on to ideas, innovation.
Well, yeah, I think there's a great advantage for people in an organisation just to have the radar switched on all the time, to look at the world around them. And that's tough in organisations because the pressure's always on. You've got your nose to the grindstone, and deadlines and what the boss wants, and that's not my job to look over there. But actually, just being curious about the world and how it's changing and what the implications of that change are for your organisation is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, particularly also because people are less courageous. I mean, as you said, they're very, very busy. But in a downturn, generally, people will be more risk adverse. So how can you create that culture of, a healthy appetite for a risk and therefore, I guess, failure, particularly in a downturn like this?
Well, I think encouraging people to look around and be curious and be interested, giving people time to do that. I think not punishing failure is the key. Well, first of all, not shouting down an idea, but then not punishing failure. They're the key ingredients to getting an organisation to try new things.
Fantastic. If we can just briefly on innovation, last thing, more and more people getting worried as CEOs that there's going to be a new competitor comes in from emerging markets, or there's going to be a new technology that just wipes out their business. And so people, if we look at, unfortunately, HMV as an example, people are having to really focus on business model innovation. So what advice would you give to CEOs and businesses really on making sure they are innovating at the business model level?
Yeah. Confront the truth. The digitization, I think, someone will correct me, was known in the mid-70s, I think. Kodak knew about it in the mid-70s. But for whatever good reason, felt unable to do anything fundamentally about it. And then the business expired 30 years later.
Right.
So they knew for 30 years. Face the truth of what's coming. The rise of China, the aging demographic, climate change, big forces that are happening, then be hopeful. In other words, believe that however bad it looks, you can survive it if you're prepared to change enough in order to confront it. And I think often what you see is businesses don't feel they can cope with it, so they just shrink away. And sometimes in the worst examples, the CEO thinks, well, you know what, I'm here for 3 years. The share price is X, my bonus is Y, I'll just keep it calm, get out the way, leave it for the next guy. And I think that really lets the organisation down. The sad thing about owners on public markets is the average ownership period is 8 months. So they're thinking, I see your point, but not while I'm owning the shares.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just worried about the price when I sell the shares. And so there can be a vacuum there, right where you need it in terms of strategic leadership.